"Run, little soldier." The voice slithered through the trees, not in words she should have understood, but in a rhythm her bones interpreted anyway. Kayla Rin froze where she crouched, mud sucking at her boots, breath clamped between her teeth. The laughter that followed wasn't human. It reverberated in the canopy above her, guttural, mocking. Her rifle trembled in her hands. The night pressed close, and she wondered whether silence was a weapon sharpened just for her. Hours earlier, she had stepped from the dropship with her helmet slightly askew, armor rattling like borrowed steel. Everything felt oversized, too much space between the plates, too little faith in her stride. At 21, Kayla was younger than most recruits, her sarcasm the only shield that hadn't yet cracked. The veterans noticed. They always noticed. "Look at the kid," one of them drawled, nudging another as they marched toward the tree lean. "Armor looks like it's trying to eat her alive." Kayla shot him a sideways grin. "At least I don't need 3 hands to scratch my back." The words came easy, but her stomach burned with the acid of nerves. Marshal Draven Holt didn't laugh. The commander's iron-gray buzz-cut and scar-lined face carried no room for amusement. He stopped, his hawk-like eyes slicing through her with the same precision he used on battle reports. "Save your wit for the grave, Rin. Out here, soldiers are expendable until they prove otherwise." His voice was flat, merciless, as though numbers mattered more than names. Kayla looked away, but the words burrowed deep. She had joined a matter, to fight, to carve a place among legends. Yet Holt had already calculated her death as a negligible cost. The jungle of Drexer, 9 swallowed them whole, every leaf dripping with moisture, every shadow pulsing like it might move. Steam hissed from the earth. The air carried the sour tang of alien flora and the faint, metallic sting of ozone. Birds, or things pretending to be birds, screeched overhead. Somewhere distant, artillery echoed like a second heart. Then the ambush came. The raiders burst from the foliage, their scaled hides slick with jungle sheen, plasma rifles flashing brilliant arcs of green. Screams tangled with the rapid staccato of human gunfire. Kayla's training surged and stumbled at once. She dropped flat, squeezed a trigger. Her first shots went wild, searing bark from trees, until one bolt struck true. The raider spasmed and fell, smoke curling from the wound. Her hands shook. She stared at the body, chest hammering against the cage of her armor. The fallen enemy's eyes stayed open, glassy, unblinking. Life had left quickly, rudely. "Welcome to the meat grinder, rookie," a corporal sneered as he reloaded. "Try not to choke on your first kill." Kayla wanted to retort, something sharp, something that hid the quake in her bones. But the jungle offered no time. Another volley erupted. Holt bellowed orders, his voice cutting through fear with brutal efficiency. They fought, pushed, retreated, fought again until the night itself seemed to decide the battle should pause. Darkness descended heavy and absolute. Fires smoldered in patches, glowing against damp leaves. The camp was tense. Men whispered of shadows moving where no one stood, of screams that ended too suddenly. Raiders themselves spoke in hushed tones, exchanging words humans couldn't parse but recognized as dread. One phrase returned again and again. "The stalker." Kayla pretended not to hear, but every syllable scratched at her mind. A predator older than their wars. A hunter that chose prey not by weakness, but by some darker arithmetic of worth. She tried to laugh, muttering under her breath. Sounds like Florida man in space. No one smiled. The silence afterward was its own kind of omen. Then came the first strike. A sergeant on watch lifted his lantern toward the trees. For a moment, nothing. Then a blur. A flash of steel, a hiss of plasma. The man was yanked upward, his scream cut off mid-breath. By the time the others raised rifles, only leaves swayed. Kayla's blood iced. She clutched her weapon tighter, her sarcasm dying somewhere behind clenched teeth. Hours stretched like years. Every snap of a twig carved panic deeper. Her eyelids begged for rest, but fear propped them open. Somewhere in the canopy, unseen eyes observed. She knew it, not in logic but in marrow. Finally, When her shift ended, she stumbled toward the perimeter, seeking any corner to be small and useless in peace. That was when she saw it. Hanging from a tree branch, swaying gently in the damp breeze, was the sergeant's body. No, less than a body. Skinned clean, stripped of armor, etched with sigils that glowed faintly in the dark. His weapon rested beneath him, untouched, a cruel courtesy. The display wasn't for victory. It was a message. Her chest locked. The bile rose sharp in her throat. Every instinct screamed to run, but her boots anchored her in horrified stillness. She could feel it, even without looking, the presence nearby. The weight of unseen breath. The patience of something that had killed countless times and still found new ways to whisper dread. She lifted her gaze despite herself. Across the clearing, half veiled in shadow, twin eyes glimmered behind a mask of bone and steel. Mandibles twitched. The air hummed faintly as if charged. The stalker, watching her. Kayla staggered back, weapon rising though she knew it was pointless. Her pulse hammered, her lungs clawing for air. Yet the figure did not move, did not strike. It only waited, evaluating, as if she were not random prey, but a candidate. The world narrowed until only two truths remained, the corpse swaying above her and the gaze pinning her to existence. The jungle around her blurred into a fever dream of steam and fear. The night was alive, and she was marked. And in that moment, one thought, absurd, desperate, flared across her mind. I should have stayed home with the cat. The creature tilted its head as though it had heard. Then, in an instant, the shadow melted back into the dark, gone as though it had never existed. Kayla collapsed against the tree, gasping while stinging her mouth. Her rifle slipped from her grip. She pressed her forehead against the damp bark, shaking with a fear too sharp for tears. The sergeant's body swayed once more, gentle mocking. You, watching this, might think courage begins where fear ends. But it is the opposite. Courage is the moment fear digs claws into your ribs, and still you move, still you breathe, still you look into eyes older than your species and refuse to kneel. Remember this, fear is not your enemy. It is the proof you are alive enough to matter. Dawn never truly broke on Drexer 9. The jungle only shifted from black to green, shadows giving way to steam. Kayla Wren sat stiff-backed beside a half-dead fire, helmet resting in her lap. Her eyes stung from smoke and sleeplessness. Around her, the remnants of the platoon moved like ghosts, faces haggard, voices stripped of bravado. The sergeant's absence was a silence none dared name. Marshal Holt stood in the center, untouched by fatigue. His uniform was still crisp, his scarred jaw set like granite. He surveyed them as though counting grains of sand in an hourglass. "We are not here to mourn," he announced. "We are here to finish. Raiders infest this jungle. We burn them out. If some of you fall, you do so serving something larger than your lives." The words rang metallic in Kayla's skull. Something larger, she thought bitterly, meant Holt's pride. One soldier muttered, "And what about that thing in the trees?" His whisper carried farther than intended. Heads lifted. Holt's eyes narrowed, cold as stone. Stories are for children. There is no monster here, only prey, too stubborn to die. His gaze fell on Kayla, or recruits too eager to believe fairy tales. Kayla clenched her jaw, fingers tightening on the helmet. She wanted to spit back, to tell him she had seen the eyes, the mandibles, the judgment that had frozen her to the roots. But sarcasm would not save her here. Not against Holt. He ordered a patrol deeper into the jungle. Reluctant feet obeyed. Kayla found herself at the rear, rifle heavy against her arm, senses stretched taut. Every rustle turned her head. Every droplet on her armor felt like a claw. Then came the strike. It started with a hiss, almost electrical. A beam of plasma seared through a private's chest, the smell of charred flesh cutting through the wet air. Screams fractured the formation. Kayla dropped to her knees, firing blindly into foliage. Another soldier vanished upward, snatched by something unseen. The jungle erupted with chaos, bolts flying in every direction, men shouting, Holt bellowing commands. But the predator was not fighting them. It was hunting them. Kayla scrambled behind a root thicker than a truck, chest heaving. Beside her, a corporal tried to reload with shaking hands. "It's picking us off. Like we're nothing." Kayla forced her voice to steady, masking the quake with humor. "Then maybe we should act like something." The corporal's reply never came. A claw lands through his chest, pulling him back into the green. His rifle clattered at her feet. Kayla swallowed bile, grabbed it, and ran. Above the gunfire came Holt's roar. "Orbital strike now. Coordinates locked. Burn this jungle to ash." Kayla's heart jolted. He was calling fire down on their own position. The comm officer hesitated. "Sir, our people. They're soldiers," Holt snapped. "Expendable. Send it." Kayla wanted to scream, but the sky answered first. Thunder rolled as streaks of fire tore through clouds. Explosions ripped the jungle apart. Trees shattered, soil churned into air, smoke and flame suffocating everything. Kayla dove into a gully, debris hammering her armor. The world convulsed with fire. When silence returned, it was not silence at all. The jungle steamed, blackened, alive with groans of dying men. And through the smoke, the hunter walked. Vorkai moved like inevitability, towering, plated hide gleaming, plasma blades humming with cold hunger. It stepped over burning wreckage as though the world itself cleared a path. Soldiers scattered, broken formations crumbling under terror. Kayla pressed duct tape across a crack in her breastplate, muttering to herself, "Universal solution, don't fail me now." Her voice shook, but the absurdity steadied her. Humor had always been her weapon against despair. If she stopped joking, she would stop breathing. Gunfire rattled. The hunter blurred. A blade cleaved through helmets, claws dragged bodies into shadows. It did not rush. It harvested. Kayla ducked beneath fallen branches, using smoke as her veil. She laid traps, simple things, desperate things. A tripline made of calm wire, a noise decoy from a broken radio, a small fire meant to draw attention. None would kill a god, but they made her feel less like prey. Her lungs burned, sweat streaking through soot on her face. Somewhere above, the hunter paused. She could feel its focus tilt toward her. Every hair on her body stood rigid. And then she heard Holt. The marshal stumbled into the clearing, one leg slick with blood, uniform scorched. His rifle dangled, but his arrogance burned brighter than the fires around him. He saw Kayla crouch behind cover and sneered. "Drag me out, Rin. You owe your commander that much." Kayla's stomach twisted. She owed him nothing. "You'll never be more than a coward," Holt spat. "You think sarcasm makes you strong? You think surviving makes you worthy? You are nothing." His voice grew louder, desperate, as though her fear fed his strength. "If the beast doesn't gut you, I will." The words hung, ugly and final. Then the jungle answered. Vorkai stepped through smoke, towering behind Holt. The marshal spun, lifting his rifle, teeth bared in fury. He fired, screaming defiance. Plasma bolts struck hide, flared against armor, vanished into insignificance. The hunter's blade sang once. Holt jerked upward, impaled through chest and shoulder, eyes wide in disbelief. He hung a moment, then was cast aside like refuse, crashing into the ash. Kayla could not move. She watched as the hunter turned toward her. Her throat constricted, yet her arms lifted the broken rifle, holding it across her chest like a sword. She knew it would not matter. She was shaking, terrified, half-choked by smoke, but she did not drop it. She would not kneel. The hunter stilled, its head tilted, mandibles flexing. It did not strike. It only watched. Kayla felt her pulse thunder against her ribs. She forced her breath steady, sarcasm dying on her lips, leaving only raw defiance. If she was to die, she would not die crawling. For a long moment, predator and prey regarded each other. Then, with deliberate grace, Vorkai lowered its weapon. It had chosen not to kill her. The jungle's fires crackled, corpses smoked, the sky glowed with ruin, and yet she stood untouched, marked by the silence of an ancient gaze. And you, watching this, should understand. Life will not measure you by victories, nor by scars. It will measure you in moments when every force tells you to collapse, and still you remain upright. Worth is not granted by authority, nor stolen by fear. It is carved in the instant you decide you are not nothing. The jungle smoldered in uneasy silence. Smoke curled skyward in ribbons, ash drifting through beams of weak daylight. The battle was over, but no one had won. Bodies lay scattered among blackened roots, their weapons still clenched or melted to their hands. Kayla Rin stood amid the wreckage, her breath ragged, her rifle hanging from torn straps. The crack in her armor stung with every move, tape peeling at the edges, but she didn't bother fixing it. There were no illusions left to protect. Vorkai loomed only a few paces away, tall enough that even the fires bent around his silhouette. His mask caught the light, mandibles twitching as though tasting her presence. The plasma blades remained sheathed, claws retracted, yet his stillness radiated menace sharper than any weapon. Kayla should have run. She should have curled into herself, begged, screamed, done anything human. Instead, she planted her boots into the ash and refused to lower her gaze. Every second stretched into eternity. She could feel her heartbeat hammering against ribs too fragile to cage it. She remembered Holt's words, "You are nothing," and let them fade like smoke into the air. Vorkai reached his chest and unhooked something. Metal glinted as he pulled free a medallion carved from alien alloy, etched with runes that glowed faintly blue. He held it in claws large enough to crush her skull, then stepped forward with deliberate weight. The ground seemed to bow under him. Kayla's throat dried to sand. Her body screamed to her to retreat, but she remained rooted. When the claw extended, she flinched but did not recoil. The medallion was pressed into her palm, heavier than it looked, heat thrumming through it like a pulse. She closed her fist, the edges biting her skin. Worthy, the creature's voice rumbled, not spoken, but resonating, vibrating through her bones. The word was guttural, alien, and yet understood. Before she could respond, he turned. With a single bound, he vanished into the canopy, shadows swallowing his form until nothing remained but smoke, silence, and the weight in her hand. Kayla's knees gave way. She sank into the ash, clutching the medallion. Tears didn't come, though her body shook. The silence pressed harder than fear, because now she knew it wasn't over. She hadn't been spared. She had been chosen. Hours later, the dropships arrived. Engines roared as rescue teams swept the wreckage, collecting survivors and tagging the dead. Kayla rose unsteadily, dirt caked across her face, hair plastered to her forehead. Medics rushed to her, but she shook them off. Her eyes searched the tree-line, half expecting to glimpse those twin glimmers again. Nothing, only jungle, watching. Soldiers whispered as she staggered back toward camp. Some stared openly, others avoided her eyes. A private muttered, "She walked out when Holt didn't." Another added, "Maybe the beast let her live." Their voices carried the strange mixture of awe and suspicion, reverence twisted with unease. Kayla tucked the medallion into her pocket before anyone could notice. Its weight felt dangerous, as though simply holding it painted a target on her skin. She told herself it was nothing but scrap, and yet the heat of it told her otherwise. The survivors regrouped. Commanders debated blame, excuses, logistics. Holt's name was spoken like an afterthought. Another casualty, another tally. But among the ranks, rumors spread faster than fire. Some called Kayla cursed. Others called her chosen. None spoke to her directly. That night, Kayla sat alone on the edge of camp, helmet at her side. She stared at the stars above the canopy. They didn't look comforting anymore. They looked like eyes countless, waiting. She thought of her cat back home, of microwave burritos she used to burn at 2 in the morning, of silly shows she once mocked. The mundanity of it hurt more than wounds. She wasn't that girl anymore. A medic approached, hesitant. "You should rest. You've seen too much." Kayla smirked faintly, though her voice cracked. "Rest sounds dangerous. What if I wake up with another monster calling me rookie?" The medic chuckled nervously, but left her in peace. She leaned back, fingers brushing the medallion again. Every line of it felt deliberate, every cut carved by centuries of ritual. It wasn't a gift. It was a promise. When dawn broke, reinforcements landed. Officers questioned her, demanding reports. She told them fragments, raiders, chaos, Holt's arrogance, the bombardment gone wrong. She never mentioned Vorkai. She couldn't. Not because she feared disbelief, but because some truths weren't meant to be handed over to paperwork and strategy. Some truths mark you alone. As the days passed, she felt the shift. Soldiers glanced at her differently, some with envy, others with unease. She wasn't just Kayla Rin, sarcastic rookie in oversized armor. She was the survivor of Drexer 9, the one who had faced something no report dared name. Yet inside, she remained uncertain. Strength wasn't what she felt. Not pride, not triumph. Only a quiet ache, a whisper that she had been measured and found, not complete, but sufficient. And that someday, somewhere, the test would come again. The transport back to orbit lifted with a roar. Kayla sat by the viewport, watching the jungle shrink in the distance, smoke trails curling like scars across the land. Her reflection stared back at her, green eyes sharp, hair matted, face hollowed by trial. She almost didn't recognize herself. She touched the pocket where the medallion rested. Its weight felt heavier with altitude, as though gravity itself wanted to keep it grounded. She whispered to no one, "Guess sarcasm's not the only thing that kept me alive." The soldier beside her frowned. "What?" Kayla smiled faintly. "Nothing. Just talking to the duct tape." The man shook his head and turned away, muttering something about rookies. But she knew. She wasn't that anymore. Rookie was a word too small now. The ship pierced clouds, stars opening wide ahead. Kayla leaned back, eyes closing. She felt the quiet strength of her heartbeat. She was still afraid, but fear no longer ruled her. Fear had become proof that she was alive enough to endure. And you, listening to this, should know, life will carve trials into your path without asking permission. It will strip you, mark you, whisper that you are nothing. But worth is not given, nor granted by those who claim authority. Worth is discovered when you face the gaze of something vast and terrible, and instead of bowing, you rise. Remember this, fear will follow you always. Let it, for only in the company of fear can courage ever be real.